talking all about energy psychology. What is it? How does it work? Why is it different? Kiannaa, tell me what it is. And so here, this video is for all of you who have been wondering and didn't know. So as energy psychology, I will say this, is 100% not therapy. And nothing against therapy, it's just not my shtick. It's not what I'm doing. It's not what I'm proposing. It's not even what I encourage. I think energy psychology is the cutting edge. And I'm going to tell you and explain to you why it's cutting edge. It is, so let me just start off. I have 5 distinctions as to why energy psychology is different than maybe traditional consulting and or coaching and or therapy. So let's just get started. The number one distinction with energy psychology is it's all about spiritual healing. You know, when we take concerns, issues, traumas, and we put them in an integrated process where your lessons are actually brought together, brought to light, if you will, and then you could shift your perspective, that is when spiritual healing actually occurs. So the first one is spiritual healing, because that's how we evolve as people. The second one is, you know, when I'm working, I am working within the quantum world. And quantum physics is not something that a lot of people are familiar with, but essentially what I am working within is the magnetic harmonic field. And what working in this field allows is it allows me to access information that maybe you as a client may not be able to see or put words to, but may have a sense of. And I can see that, I can access it, and I can share it with you. And as we move the energy, that knowing or awareness begins to shift and change, because we now have a new understanding. So the quantum field of harmonics is really essentially this. We are always vibrating a frequency. And that frequency changes when we are accessing the magnetic field. And as we access it and we raise the frequency to a higher frequency, you begin to have different experiences attracted to you, or you attracted to it, and your life begins to change and evolve in a totally different way. The third big distinction is awareness. I think this is the biggest thing that you will experience from an energy psychology session immediately, is that you will have an increase of awareness from a particular situation and or challenge. Is that when you have this immediate increase, what happens is you can now move forward in a totally different way. And isn't that a beautiful thing? I mean, sometimes we think and we rethink and we overthink, and what that does is it limits us. And so when you have this access to this new awareness, what you're really tapping into is your personal freedom. And don't we all want more freedom and to be more aware? At least I do. And I know the clients that come to me want more and greater awareness. When we have that greater awareness, that brings a greater connection, which is my distinction number 4, is when you have an energy psychology session, what you're doing is you're reconnecting maybe parts of yourself that were disconnected or fragmented, and we're making things a little bit more cohesive and aligned. And when you are cohesive and aligned, you are connecting with your soul and your spirit, and that allows you to experience life in a totally different way. So what this connection does is it comes back with ease instead of like a shock, which there are many people that have these situations that they get rocked, like a near-death experience or life-changing moment, and like, boom, things are changed and different, and then you have to like reacclimate, which happens like that a lot of times when there are situations that occur in our life. When you choose to have an energy psychology session, what you're doing is you're choosing to have those on a more regular basis in an easy, graceful way, to where your soul and your spirit and your higher self can all get reconnected with ease and grace instead of shock and awe. We all have different learnings and the way that we need to learn. So maybe some people need to be woken up in that way. The other fifth distinction between an energy psychology session and maybe a coaching or therapy session would be this, is, at least for me, Kiannaa Sage, I work with a systems approach. And the systems approach is essentially mind, body, soul, spirit, and aligning all those systems energetically so we can have a more cohesive, easier path. That does not mean that you won't have challenges. What it does mean is that you have raised in your consciousness, and how you are approaching those challenges then changes. So those being aligned, mind, body, soul, spirit, when those are aligned, you have access to new levels of consciousness. And those always are going to aid you on your path forward. Whenever you have an expanded view of a consciousness, let's just say a big picture, you're seeing things more holistically, then change happens easier and faster. And just a short story, as a consultant, I always had clients wonder, how does she do that? Like, how does she get those changes? How does she get these people to react or to respond to her? How do people have these epiphanies when they're working with Kiannaa? And the simple answer is I always have worked from a holistic perspective, a systems perspective, where I'm aligning all those pieces so things kind of click and sync up. And sometimes they appear as if they're unhinged, if you will, but they're really just realigning. And that's how I'm able to get so much progress in such a short period of time. When I was doing consulting and in this energy psychology work, even when I'm working with teams, I don't even have to work with them in person. I can work with them virtually, because when our energy systems are aligned and we're working from a higher perspective, that bigger perspective, we have a new understanding, even if we don't understand why we're understanding things so differently. That's called consciousness. That is expansion. So in a nutshell, that's the distinctions between a therapy session and what an energy psychology session is like with me. You might be wondering, well, what does Kiannaa do in an energy psychology session, and what types of situations would I even bring? And the real answer is it's limitless. But I wanted to give you some of the more frequent things that people bring into session. That's very common. So one of the biggest one is fear, which is really up for a lot of people. People are afraid of a lot of things. People are operating out of fear more often than not. That is not our natural rhythm, to operate out of fear. And therefore, when it's not our natural rhythm, what that does is it repatterns our entire energy field. And even people that don't think they're operating out of fear, whether they're in denial or not, they are, and their patterns are mimicked and repeated because of that. So fear is a big thing that I work with people on. Stress, overwhelm, traumas, and a big one is depression and suicidal thoughts or tendencies. I've had great successes with children and adults who have been suicidal with this method. And this is the beauty of energy psychology, is it doesn't take 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 years of therapy to dive deep into why you're having those suicidal thoughts. I'm able to see why and repattern you, and it only takes 1 or 2 sessions sometimes. The issue with when we are clearing traumas or fear is that you need to find a new way. And when you've done things one way your entire life, it's sometimes difficult to learn a new way of being. And that's why it's good to have exposure with these energy psychology sessions, is to have some guidance on your path to the new way. Because we all need assistance. We all need guides. We all need someone who we can trust on this path called life. And I think that's really what I offer in these energy psychology sessions, is that outside perspective from the magnetic harmonic fields, and looking at, well, what is it that you're vibrating at and what needs to be shifted so we can have a new perspective and attract something different, have new and exciting lessons. And I think that the key thing that I want you to know with an energy psychology session is we aren't getting rid of stuff. We're just looking at it through a different lens. And when you see things from a new perspective, a bigger, more global perspective, holistic perspective, you operate totally differently. And what happens is your life becomes easier. You have better, higher quality problems, and you don't shy away from them. You just look at them and approach them in a completely different way, because essentially when you are repatterning your energy fields, you become a different way. Your way of being becomes different. That's why it's called being in sync. You know, being in sync with your soul, your mind, your body, your spirit. That's what being in sync is. It's not being in sync with something outside of yourself. It's like reconnecting with everything that's within you. So cheers to being in sync.